Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. You know how much I love to really get into a subject, and today is no different.
I'm excited to dive in.
Me too.
Yeah.
And today we're talking about a book that has a really thought-provoking title and premise.
Okay.
Don't believe everything you think. Why your thinking is the beginning and end of suffering.
Oh, I love that.
It's by Joseph Nguyen.
Okay. Yeah.
And honestly, this book has been making me think differently about, well, everything,
Okay.
because it really digs into this idea that our thoughts
Yeah.
might actually be the root of a lot of our problems,
Okay. I'm intrigued.
right? It's not necessarily like the situations themselves, but how we think about them that causes suffering.
That's interesting. So it's not about what happens to us, but how we interpret it.
Exactly. And, I think we've all had those moments where like something happens and then we just spiral,
Oh,
explode our
absolutely.
heads.
The what ifs.
Yes. And that's when things get really tough.
Yeah, you start catastrophizing, right? Like one small thing goes wrong, and suddenly you're envisioning the worst case scenario.
Totally. And so one of the big things Nguyen talks about is that our thoughts aren't always true.
Mm-hmm. We tend to treat them as facts, don't we?
Yeah, and like we give them so much power.
Right. Like if you think I'm a failure, you start to believe it, and then you act accordingly.
Right. And he gives this example
Okay.
about like if you got a bad grade on a test,
Yeah.
okay, it's natural to be disappointed.
Sure.
But if you then start thinking I'm stupid or I'm never going to succeed, that's when the real suffering kicks in.
It's like you're adding insult to injury, piling on the negativity.
Exactly. So I think that's a good example of how like it's not the situation itself,
Yeah,
but our thoughts about it that really cause the problem.
makes sense. So how do we break free from these negative thought patterns?
Well, that's where the good stuff comes in. The book is full of practical strategies for changing how we think.
Oh, good, because just knowing the problem isn't enough, right?
Right. We need solutions. So one of the things Nguyen emphasizes is mindfulness.
Mindfulness, okay. What exactly is that?
So it's basically about being present in the moment
Okay.
and paying attention to your thoughts and feelings
Okay.
without judgment.
Right, so not trying to push away the negative thoughts, but just observing them.
Exactly. And he describes it
Yeah.
like watching your thoughts go by like clouds.
I like that.
You don't try to grab onto them or push them away. You just let them float on by.
Okay, so we're creating some distance between ourselves and our thoughts.
Yeah. And so
Oh.
by doing that,
Wow.
you kind of start to see that your thoughts aren't you.
Got it. Yeah.
They're just these things that pop up in your mind.
That's a really interesting concept. So by practicing mindfulness, we can start to detach ourselves from our thoughts and not take them so personally.
Exactly. And that's when you can start to choose which thoughts to believe and which ones to let go of.
Okay, so we're taking back control.
Yes. And another powerful tool that Nguyen talks about is questioning your thoughts.
Questioning them, like how?
So when you have a negative thought, you don't just automatically accept it as truth.
Right.
You pause and you ask yourself, is this thought really true?
That's interesting.
Is there any evidence to support this thought? And often you'll find that the answer is no.
And then what?
Then you can choose to let that thought go.
So it's like we're putting our thoughts on trial.
Yes. And like a lawyer, you got to present the evidence.
I love that analogy.
And if there's no evidence, you can dismiss the case.
Okay, that makes sense.
And I think this part is really cool.
Okay.
He talks about intuition
Yeah.
and how we can actually learn to trust our gut feelings more.
Our gut feelings. So like going with our instincts.
Yeah. And sometimes we have this like inner knowing,
Mm-hmm.
but then our mind kicks in and starts overthinking things.
Oh, I know that all too well.
Right. And we end up second guessing ourselves.
Yeah, and then we make the wrong decision.
Exactly. But Nguyen says that intuition is like this deeper form of wisdom
Okay.
that comes from our subconscious mind.
So it's like tapping into a well of knowledge that we don't even realize we have.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And he encourages us to like start paying more attention to those gut feelings.
So how do we do that?
Well, he suggests things like meditation,
Okay.
spending time in nature,
Mm-hmm.
anything that helps you to quiet your mind and connect with your inner self.
So by quieting the mental chatter, we can hear our intuition more clearly.
Exactly. And I think that's so important because, our minds can be so loud sometimes.
They really can,
And we can get so caught up in our thoughts that we lose touch with our intuition.
which can lead us down the wrong path.
Yeah. So it's all about like creating space,
Mm-hmm.
mental space for those intuitive insights to come through.
Like decluttering our minds to make room for something new.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And, the whole book really ties back to this idea of unconditional love.
Unconditional love.
Yeah. And he suggests that our thoughts can actually create separation
Separation from what?
from ourselves, from others, and even from a sense of like a higher power or the universe.
Hmm. Interesting.
But when we start to change our thinking,
Yeah.
we can start to experience more love and connection in our lives.
So it's like our thoughts are a barrier to love.
Yeah. And by breaking down those barriers,
Yeah.
we can open ourselves up to a whole new level of love and happiness.
That's powerful.
I know. It's really made me think about like how my own thoughts might be holding me back from experiencing more love in my life.
It makes you wonder what we're all capable of if we could just get out of our own way.
Totally. And I think that's the beauty of this book. It's
Yeah.
not just theoretical. It's like a practical guide to actually changing your life.
And it all starts with becoming aware of our thoughts.
Exactly. So if you're ready to start living a more peaceful and fulfilling life, I highly recommend checking out Don't Believe Everything You Think.
It's definitely going on my reading list.
And I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Me too.
So let us know what you think in the comments.
Sounds good.
All right, everyone. Until next time, happy thinking.
Happy thinking.